This video is comprised of a segment from the most recent edition of the Tukey's Take podcast, the very end of the show, where we talk about the tragic passing of one Adam Johnson. I wanted to make two things clear. First and foremost, this video is not monetized. We are not trying to make a cent off of this horrific tragedy. Secondly, if you'd like to hear the rest of the show or watch the rest of the show that is not as depressing, you can do so on any audio platform of choice. Just search Tukey's Take podcast. You can also watch it on the video side of things. For now, I won't say enjoy the video because we certainly didn't enjoy talking about it. All I can say is rest in peace, Adam. So with that, we have one of the most difficult transitions of all time, one of the most difficult segues of all time, but there's no
good way to do
exactly. No good way to transition topics, and I wanted to still have that moment of levity that I knew that question would provide. I mentioned this earlier on Twitter and Twitch that, and I want to. God, I don't even know how to. Okay. I don't even know how to bring this up, essentially, because it is the biggest story in hockey right now, but it is a conversation that we have to have. We do try to keep this show light and fun, like podcasts should be, because at the end of the day, it's a group of friends. In this instance, with Endo missing the show, it's two friends sitting around having fun talking about hockey. But the biggest story in hockey right now is the passing of Adam Johnson at 29 years old. And there's a lot of different ways this conversation could go. I'm tempted, Sin, to just be like, I'm going to rant and interrupt me whenever.
All I want to say is to the fucking people still sharing that video, fuck you. Like, I'm so glad I haven't watched it, or I haven't even come across it, but a lot of people have, and the fuck, man? Like, what?
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't want to say the negative side because there's a lot of negative to this. Yeah. Unfortunately, this incident is very much out there in video form. You know, it was a game that was being broadcasted. There were fans in the stands. I haven't seen, thank God, any clips from people in the crowd that recorded shit on their phone, although there are written testimonials essentially as to what went down after the video clip that is going around happened to cut out. For people who essentially do not know, I'm sure you do at this point, you're listening to a hockey podcast, but Adam Johnson is a former NHLer who was playing in the UK that was involved in an incident where one of his teammates and a player on the opposite team, who I am not going to name because there are fucking psychopaths out there on social media who are trying to make this into, oh, he murdered him.
A conspiracy. God, dude.
As if there have never been any incidents in which after contact, a skate has come up. I do not buy into this theory. Well, he kicked his leg into the air to stop Johnson's momentum, who was cutting across the ice at the time. Do not give validity to these people. Do your best to ignore these people. I don't even feel well enough to... I don't even know if this is the right decision to even mention the fact that people are trying to make this a thing, but it is a necessary thing because I would like to think anybody listening to this show or watching this video on YouTube after the fact is not the type of person who's going to sit there and try to make this more of a thing.
Yeah.
I think about what the conversation is going to be now in regards to this, and obviously we're going to talk about neck guards a lot. And something that I keep going back to is this idea that, oh, neck guards, they're not cool or they're not comfortable. You know what's uncomfortable? Watching that fucking video on Twitter. That's uncomfortable. You know what's uncomfortable is seeing his teammates rallied together, I believe outside the arena, addressing fans. Some media were there as well, covering their statements. What's uncomfortable is seeing friends and former teammates of him on Twitter talk about what a fucking loss this is to them in their personal lives. What's uncomfortable, and this comes from the Athletic article on the story earlier where they interviewed Riley Tufte, former Dallas Stars draft pick, who mentioned that Adam Johnson was recently engaged, and that he and his girlfriend were living over in the UK while he was playing hockey, and that he leaves behind both of his parents, an older brother, and a lot of family. That is fucking uncomfortable. The conversation surrounding proper protection and equipment needs to change. And it's not because Adam Johnson made a mistake. He didn't. He was essentially failed by the hockey world. Because he, much like 99% it feels like of other pro players, do not wear neck guards. He was simply following the status quo of the sport, which is why I feel comfortable in saying that the sport failed him in this absolute goddamn tragedy that occurred over this weekend. I have a bunch of different thoughts here, essentially, and I might bounce back and forth between different topics, and again, at any time, feel free to interject. Because how the fuck do you cover something like this?
Yeah.
My first thought that I want to mention here is that the NHL needs to lead the charge right now, moving forward on pushing for this to be mandatory. It is currently mandated for youth leagues in Canada, but USA Hockey does not have this as a mandated requirement for players. It is worth noting that the EIHA, the English Ice Hockey Association, is now making neck guards mandatory for all players on ice activities starting December 31st. The only reason it is not 100% mandated right now is they are concerned about equipment shortages. So they're saying right now, if you have one, we heavily advise you wear it. And after the end of this year, it is mandatory. You will be wearing a neck guard in our league. The NHL needs to lead the charge on this. If you mandate, because I can't help but think about this. At 29 years old, you're going to have, or older, even younger, you're going to have people push back against, again, oh, it's uncomfortable, it's not breathable. It's already instilled in players of that age. It's already instilled in players who are 19 years old, playing in college hockey and junior right now. But I think about the next generation, the 9-year-old kids that are learning to play hockey right now, that are going to be draft eligible 9 years from now. Those are the kids, that is the generation where it's, if you want to play in the NHL, you have to wear a neck guard because it's mandatory in that league. You need to instill in everybody right now that neck guards and wrist guards are mandated. Because similar to, and the thing that I can continue to equate this to, because I had this conversation with my fiance, we had a car trip yesterday, and it's like, okay, what are we going to talk about to fill up time? And I told her about this incident. And we had the conversation in regards to cars. Vehicles weren't always standard with airbags and seatbelts. But unfortunately, as they say, rules are written in blood. And was there pushback in regards to wearing seatbelts? Of course, some people still don't. And especially when they first became a standard thing, there are people, I'm not fucking wearing this. Even fucking rules around drunk driving. There are people, I'm not following your fucking rules. But eventually, it becomes such a norm and standard that someone of my generation at 29 as well, every time I get in a car, I just do it. I don't think about it. I don't think about how people didn't used to do it. It is normal. It is commonplace. And that is where you need to get with this equipment. You need to make it normal and commonplace. You need to have kids from day one who don't view it as oh God, you got to wear this extra piece of equipment. You need to get it into the mindset. The best time to do this was 15 plus fucking years ago, if not more. The next best time is now to instill in these kids that it is just a part of the equipment. It's not an extra accessory for safety. It is just the standard for equipment. And I think we're still good here, hopefully. I really don't want to have to go through this rant again. We had a little slight disconnect. We should be good.
I didn't see it. Okay.
It needs to be standard, and sorry, I lost my train of thought, but it needs to be standard for these kids that it is just another piece of equipment.
Yeah.
No different than your fucking shin pads. It is just what you put on when you play hockey. There's no other choice surrounding this. Especially, too, because we have seen in the past Clint Malarchuk get his neck cut during an NHL game, and it's a fucking miracle he didn't die. And the only reason he didn't is because the fucking trainer that came off the bench was apparently a fucking medic in Vietnam who had the best fucking training you could possibly goddamn have and knew exactly what to do to give him the best chance of survival. It is a fucking miracle that he didn't die that night. Richard you know what? Before I even bring up Richard Zednik, for goalies, it's still not fucking mandated to have the neck guards. How is that still a choice? The Malarchuk thing happened in what, 89? Somewhere between 89 and like 93? How is that still not mandated? That is irresponsible as fuck. And sometimes...
That's one of the main reasons I don't watch any sort of hockey compilation videos in there. Because, like, half the time it just fucking gets thrown in. And it makes me sick to my stomach to watch that clip.
Mm-hmm. Hockey itself is an inherently dangerous sport. You are never going to be able to remove the full danger from the sport. I think we saw that over the past couple of days as well, that you are always going to have incidents like what happened with Eric Brandstrom this week, as he was down essentially convulsing on the ice after a pretty routine finish check by Cal Clutterbuck. The only way to avoid that is to eliminate checking. That's not going to happen. You are going to have, and I should mention as well, the Okposo Cale Makar incident, which, you know, there's debate over, what was Okposo's intent. You're always going to kind of have moments like that in a fast, competitive sport. And no one on this show, at least, I imagine, is arguing for the removal of checking from the men's game, because it's not a realistic thing. That's just not going to happen. It is always going to be an inherently dangerous sport, but you need to learn from these incidents and evolve with these incidents to stop them from happening again. Neck guards for goalies not becoming commonplace after the Malarchuk incident is absurd. Neck guards for players not becoming commonplace after the Richard Zednik incident is fucking absurd. Wrist guards not becoming commonplace after Evander Kane had his wrist sliced last season is fucking absurd. So again, I reiterate that Adam Johnson was failed by the hockey world because in a grand scheme, people just didn't learn. They just kind of said, well, it sucks it happened to him, but it hasn't happened to me. And you never fucking know when it can happen to you. It was this past week that Jakub Lauko on the Bruins almost lost a fucking eye. If you look at the picture he posted on social media, it is between the fucking... It's basically the corner of his nose and the where your fucking eyebrow connects and ends, right? Think about it. That is an inch away from probably losing his goddamn eye. And you can say, oh, well, visors are now mandated for players. And yes, they are, because the NHL learned. Although you still have some players that you're like, well, your grandfather, then you don't have to wear one. And I'm sorry, at this point, I view that as irresponsible as fuck.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name the players because the lists are out there. I'm not calling anyone of them out individually. But for that group of players, where you're not required to wear a face mask because you're grandfathered in, you're being irresponsible as fuck at this point. Honestly, you're setting a bad fucking example for people that are watching the game at this stage. I genuinely think those players, and there's one on the Boston Bruins, you need to set a better fucking example at this stage. Wear the fucking visor. It's not a full cage at this point. It fucking should be, by the way. It's not a full cage. It's just a basic ass fucking visor. Put the goddamn thing on. At the same time, I'm just genuinely surprised at people who are parents. If you're not requiring, especially if you fucking play hockey yourself, and you're not requiring people to, and Sin, I'll let you go. I'm just gonna keep fucking going. I don't want to lose my train of thought. You're good. I don't understand the people as well that let their kids play hockey and they themselves don't kind of show that care. Lead by example. Teach by example, essentially. I can't imagine being a parent and just being like, yeah, no, my kid doesn't need to wear a neck guard. My kid doesn't need to wear wrist guards. There needs to be a new level, a new standard. And as I mentioned, in regards to the equipment and the idea that, oh, it's not comfortable, it's not breathable, even though you have essentially the Under Armour shirts that just go up. Even if they're still not the most comfortable, as the demand grows for them to be commonplace in the game, they are going to get more comfortable because more emphasis will be on this being a required piece. So more attention and time will go into making these as light, cool, and comfortable as possible because everyone needs one now, instead of it just being a thing that's by choice. More resources will go into the equipment taking that next step up. Again, I mentioned freaking other injuries and goalies with neck guards. Fucking Malcolm Subban took a puck to his fucking larynx and fractured it when he was in junior. There's so many different examples, and it's that idea of needing to learn from the past and essentially not failing Adam Johnson and his family at this point. This has to be the line in the sand of, we should have made those changes a long time ago and we didn't. And now look at this. And if you have the English Ice Hockey Association saying, we're making this mandatory, the NHL needs to lead by example and be at the forefront of this. They simply have to be. You are not going to kind of see the change that you need to see in this situation unless the number one is leading the way. And I will reiterate, you have seen the fact that this is an inherently dangerous sport, and it is, but there are ways to make it safer at this stage. And like I said, it's too late for someone like Adam Johnson or of an older generation. It's probably too late for the guys who are in junior or starting in college right now, and for the guys in between, those two generations. But for kids now, again, if you instill day one, this is just a part of the equipment, you will eventually see that change where it's not an issue. And it's just what people wear to play hockey. And it's a goddamn shame that didn't happen sooner. Something has to be done about it now. And I really hope to see the NHL leading the charge there. In the AHL, you had members of the Providence Bruins wear one during their game last night. You also had the really, really heart-wrenching tribute from members of the Ontario Reign that had played with Johnson previously. It's just one of those things, as we welcome back Sin here. It's just one of those things where, and I feel like I finally run out of steam on the rant, and Sin, again, I apologize for kind of taking the reins with this whole thing, but it's been something where it's like it's been on my mind since it happened, especially in the aftermath of hearing that he passed away, where it's the the genuine sadness for him, his friends, his family, and frustration that it's even a thing. Because, and again, it's you. In no way can anyone blame Adam Johnson. Like, oh, we should have been wearing a neck guard. Fucking hardly anybody does, and that's the problem.
Yeah. I think you're making, a really good point about how this needs to become normal. I mean, there's pushback when they're fucking making people wear helmets in the NHL.
That's something else I was going to mention. You're right. Players didn't wear helmets. Goalies. Fiance didn't know this. Again, she wasn't really a hockey fan before she met me. Goalies used to not wear masks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a source of pride to not wear a mask.
It's crazy.
We've grown beyond that. Sorry if there was an extra point that you had that I cut you off on.
No, not at all. Like, that's just, you were right in that, like, unfortunately, rules are written in blood. And that was one of them because someone died after they smacked their head on the ice. And they started mandating helmets. But yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Lauko because that was the thing I thought of, like that, and that happened a couple of years ago too, where someone took a skate like right here, and like that's even through visors and other stuff like that. Like it's, of course, there's no failsafe, but this whole tough guy thing needs to stop. I saw when people start bringing up, net guards, people out of the woodwork come all the motherfuckers who are like, soft. Like, but someone just died, man. Like, and yes, while you don't want to overreact, that's what human nature does. I mean, the whole war on drugs was brought about because a dude in basketball OD'd who was a big star. And that, yes, has led to more horrific stuff, but like, those same people who are all about the toughness and stuff like that love that kind of shit. I love war on drug, love crime and punishment. I'm getting off topic, but I want to bring it back to just the whole thing of like, I don't want the NHL to continue to cater to these people. Mm-hmm. It's the same people, the same reason why they got rid of the specialty nights and why they later made the statement to ban Pride Tape and stuff like that. It's the same kind of people. The same faux toughness, macho, keep the game old school and all that stuff. And it's just...
My fear good. As a hockey fan is that the NHL is going to wait until it happens on their fucking ice.
I don't...
That's the fear, is that they're going to be like, well, you know what happened in England? And we got the... And the players as well. The fear is, like... The fact of the matter is... Sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. Mm-hmm. That is just a fact. Especially if you are a professional athlete, that drive, that competitiveness that got you there is often detrimental to your health. You see it in the MMA world with weight cutting. Even someone who's not a large dude like Conor McGregor, who would cut weight and would look like a fucking skeleton on the scale, and then would put 20 pounds back on between nights of the weigh-in and the fights.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to step in and say, we need to protect you from yourselves. And this is one of those instances where, like I said, there is that group of guys who will say, condolences, I met him, he was a really nice guy. But they will also say, well, it's a freak injury, and, well, it's the first time someone's died on ice in a really long time in a professional setting, and they won't do anything. Yeah. You have to force people. You'll have to drag some people kicking and screaming into this change, even if it's for the betterment of their own safety and health. That is just how some people operate. It is. It's that idea, too, behind visors. And, we'll grandfather it in that people don't have to wear it. But if you're new, you have to wear it now. And a lot of people were pissed. But guess what? People still wear visors in the NHL now, and it's not a big fucking deal anymore. People wear helmets, and it's not a big deal anymore. Goalies wear masks, and it's not a big deal anymore. Yeah. Even if you have to drag people kicking and screaming, you have to do it. Otherwise, and honestly, like I think of F1 as well. Speaking about sports. And longtime F1 fans will know this. Not all that long ago, I think it was 2018 that this was implemented. Before that, it was just an open cockpit. It was just you sitting down, and that's it. Now, if you watch F1, they have something called the Halo, which is essentially compare it to a T, right? You have a roll bar, essentially.
Yeah, I'm
3
looking it up
points,
right now.
1, 2, and 3 right in the middle to stop you from potentially getting fucking crushed by an airborne car. And a lot of people are like, oh, I don't fucking like this is what it is. And now it's just a thing because people are like, oh shit. Especially, we've already seen a couple of drivers who would have died in the past 5 years. Romain Grosjean, Guan Yu Zhou come to mind. These guys would have fucking died if it wasn't for that change. To the point now where even like the most staunch people who were against it are like, yeah, no, it was a good idea. Sometimes you have to drag people kicking and screaming to change, even if it's illogical that you should have to do that in the first place.
Yeah.
There just has to be that change. I do not care how, it's uncomfortable and, I don't care. And Sin, one of the points that I made when you had to step away was the idea that once it becomes a standard thing, more resources, time will be invested into making it as light, as cool, as less distracting as it can possibly be. Because that's what happens. Necessity fuels invention. This whole idea of, they're going to be as uncomfortable as they were in 1998. That's not a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Not to mention this whole goddamn idea, and let's be honest, we know where this is a fucking problem. It's at the grassroots level. Beer leagues. I know people who have worn neck guards at beer league that got chirped. Oh, you fucking pussy. It's the idea that, and I know the stories are out there. Oh, cool, I don't have to wear one anymore? Fucking yeet. Just get rid of that thing. Don't need to wear it anymore. No one's forcing me to wear it anymore.
I got chirped in middle school when playing basketball for a league because I wore knee pads. Because I fucking went hard. And then you'd fall down. Like my parents like, hey, you don't want to fuck up your knees, you need those. And I wore knee pads and shit like that. And I remember getting chirped by like people, and I'm like, whatever, dude. Like it's pretty sweet. I'm like, hey, I can slide on my knees if I want. It's so weird that like safety is like makes you less of a man, like that whole mentality. It's so fucking weird. It's like, you know what, I want to enjoy being an old man and having good use of my body. So people
are fucking stupid.
Yeah,
people are stupid. And I'm sorry, there's the crowd out there, it should be personal choice, the risk. And again, I'm not going to name the other player. It wasn't his choice. But he is, the guy whose skate blade hit Adam Johnson is forever affected by this. So even if your argument is, Adam Johnson chose, the other guy fucking didn't. And he's going to be affected by this for the rest of his fucking life. As being a non-star in the NHL, whenever this guy's name is mentioned, this will be the first fucking thing that is brought up. Is that he was the other guy involved in this incident. Yeah. He did not fucking choose that. But you will have that situation still pop up if it is a player's choice to not wear one, because the risks. Like, at the end of the day, if I go to the fucking grocery store after we're done recording this, and I get in my car, and I get in an accident, I'm wearing my belt, the other driver isn't. But that guy dies and I don't, I'm still going to be affected by that because I was still involved in something that fucking killed somebody.
Yeah, the people who act like you should not feel any empathy or anything if something like that happens, if someone else was, quote, like doing something wrong. Fuck me, man. Like that really worries me about us as society, and not so much as a species, but us as a fucking society, because like some people have just learned to not be empathetic or haven't been taught how to be empathetic, and And I don't know if that number's growing. It's just we're hearing from those type of people more and more and more. And it really makes you feel, it's almost like in a situation of like where you're being gaslit by someone. It almost makes you feel like you're the crazy one. Like, why do I always feel absolutely awful when bad things happen? It's like, well, you should.
Mm-hmm.
You really should, because you're able to draw the comparisons, and doesn't even have to be to your life. Like, that is a life. That is a human. They thought like you. They lived a life like you. Like, obviously not a direct comparison to how you live, but it is you, essentially. Every single human being, essentially, when you strip everything away, is the same fucking thing as what you are. And
I shared my sympathies, and I haven't talked about this on the podcast because what the fuck can I even say? I shared my sympathies last week with those who were involved in the Lewiston shooting here in my home state. And because I dared mention that it was my home state, I had some fucking Neanderthals on social media. Oh, way to make it about you. And the point of mentioning that it happened in my state was to say that, number one, and I'll mention this too, a lot of people know this from Twitch, when they found the shooter dead, he was less than a mile away from one of my groomsmen's houses. So yeah, this situation hit pretty fucking close. But it was one of those things where it's like, oh, how dare I send sympathy to people? Oh, how dare I be empathetic? And it's one of those things where, you know, my comments on that situation were essentially like, hey, we're lacking common sense here, and another fucking tragedy happens. The hockey world, we're lacking common sense here in making changes to protect people. And I hope to God that Adam Johnson's the last fucking one, because he shouldn't have been on the list in the first place. You have to protect people from themselves on occasion. Obviously, I am not equating playing a sport to what the fuck happened in Lewiston, Maine, but you get the point in that there's this fucking attitude that some people have. Oh, it's not going to happen to me. It's not going to happen here. And then shit does, and all of a sudden they change their tune.
yeah.
But until then, they have no problem chirping people over the fucking equipment that they wear. I've talked to Deke, good friend Deke Slayer, who's been on this show a couple times. Starts playing hockey at an older age than most people. Wears face protection. He's gotten chirped over it. Oh yeah, what an irresponsible guy, just wanting to play hockey somewhat recreationally, that has a daughter at home, that doesn't want to fucking lose an eye or, you know, suffer a serious injury. What a fucking nerd. I wanted to mention this as well, because again, there's so many different branching aspects to this. And some people could maybe say, oh, hypothetical situations. You know that they're not, in terms of how we're mentioning how people talk and discuss this shit. We wish they were hypothetical. You know they're not.
Yeah.
I mentioned Endo chiming in on this. And obviously, as people who listen to the show routinely know or watch this show know, he plays goalie on a essentially nightly fucking basis around the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. He had this thing to add in regards to injuries. When Erik Karlsson had his Achilles tendon sliced, the NHL mandated additional padding and protection for that area off of one incident. He also mentions in regards to the equipment, newer advancements in technology have allowed Kevlar to be less intrusive and bulky even on base layers. Like, there's already been that step up. There will now be this continued step up in terms of this equipment being a more viable option, a less intrusive option, and it's now up to individual leagues. But again, I will continue to put the onus on the NHL, because the NHL is the goal at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if there's incident like NASCAR introducing the Hans device after Dale Earnhardt passed away. If you do not see the changes at the biggest level, at the target for people who get involved in the first place, you will not see changes elsewhere. It is on the NHL to lead this charge, because if they don't, the change won't happen. I feel like we've mentioned everything that we can in regards to this subject. I am going to kind of put this out as its own clip on the YouTube side of things. I would have mentioned at the start of the podcast that this is not monetized. I want to reiterate that for this, like the podcast itself, I have no choice essentially, but for this side clip, not monetized. We're not looking to freaking make a cent off of what is an absolute tragedy. And if it makes me an empathetic bitch to feel bummed out that friends and family of Adam Johnson have suffered a massive loss, then so be it. I just really, really hope that he is the last at this stage, because you hate to say it, but it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened, and I do not understand. And again, I've mentioned the Clint Malarchuk thing, and I do not recommend people even fucking
Please
Google
don't.
his name, because when you do, Google image picture, bam, right there, first thing, even when you're just trying to fucking Wikipedia it. That incident happened in 1989, and goalies are still not mandated in the NHL. It makes me wonder what would have happened if he did pass away. Would that have been enough to be like, yeah, no, neck guards are mandatory now? And the thing is, if this incident happens in 1989 and it became mandatory after that, this generation of goalies that we're watching right now would have known nothing else but wearing a neck guard, and it wouldn't be a conversation at all. It wouldn't be a big deal at all, because it would have been the standard.
Nope.
With that, everybody, we will look to wind things down for this show. So I don't know if we had any other kind of topics we wanted to cover or discuss for our little overtime segment. I don't think we do. I don't know what I want to encourage people to do. Fucking think before you speak. Be empathetic, people. Don't attack the other person involved in this on social media. Go for a fucking walk, if that's even a thought. Like I said, just hopefully this is the last time. While he is not here, I still want to, of course, implore people to follow the one and the only Endurance M, ENDO RANCEM on Twitter, and of course on Twitch. He is still streaming quite often, doing some Be a Pro stuff. Sin, what do you have going on?
Usual stuff, YouTube and things like that.
You can find me everywhere at Tukey24, of course. We will be back later this week. Again, the schedule is going to be a little bit disjointed over the next 2 weeks because I am getting married in 6 days, which is fucking weird to think about.
Hubby 24.
Yes, indeed. Just all I can do to wrap up this show is just encourage people to be good people, and don't be afraid to take the extra bit of goddamn precaution when you're doing something that is inherently dangerous. It does not matter if people are gonna fucking haze you for it. It's literally better to be safe. We're not encouraging people to live in a bubble, but it's just certain risks you don't have to take.